Hello, this is Dale Crosby from CPD for Accountants. In today's fluctuating economic climate, small businesses must navigate complex financial landscapes to ensure sustainability and growth. Small business equity financing is a comprehensive e-learning course designed to equip business advisors and virtual CFOs with the knowledge and tools to guide their clients through various funding options. The course has been designed and delivered in conjunction with subject matter expert Peter Towers from ESS BizTools. In this short presentation, Peter will provide further information on this course and why it's so important for business advisors and CFOs to understand the funding options. Welcome, Peter.
G'day, Dale. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And thanks for your involvement in putting this course together. We've got a series of quick questions to ask just to give people interested in the course a bit of a better understanding of what's involved. So I'll start with the first question. What inspired you to create the Small Business Equity Financing course?
Dale, I've been, as you know, involved with trying to develop a broader range of services for accountants to offer to SMEs for many years. But as part of my career, I did spend 11 years in a public company where I was the chief financial officer and the company secretary. And I realized the vast difference in approach that a public company has in arranging its finance. For argument's sake, public company directors normally don't give guarantees to banks. And yet an SME trying to borrow money mortgages everything, their house, their car, and their wife's personal possessions and all sorts of things. So I thought there was an opportunity there, especially as we have more awareness these days by governments of the need to improve the flexibility that SMEs had to be able to raise capital rather than borrowing everything and having to mortgage all their assets.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think you've probably answered the next question. Can you explain the significance of equity financing for small businesses compared to traditional debt financing?
Well, traditional debt financing in Australia has been built around borrowing money from banks and other financial organisations, family associates, business associates. You know, it was only 43 years ago, I think, that, sorry.
That's okay, keep going, we can edit it.
It was only 43 years ago that the government under Paul Keating, as the Treasurer, introduced Section 708 of the Corporations Act, which we'll talk in more detail a bit later. But that, for the first time, brought in the opportunity for SMEs to be able to raise capital legally in the marketplace. Since then, we've had some further innovations, which I know we're going to talk about. So there has been some big steps. I think there can be more in the future, and there needs to be a greater awareness, I think, from accountants. And we might comment on that when we get to early stage innovation companies of the phone call you had last year. And I think as accountants, we can be more involved in helping our clients to appreciate that there is funding that they can obtain for their businesses and the processes that are needed to obtain it.
Okay, that's great. Can you elaborate on the types of private investments covered in the course and their potential benefits for SMEs, just in brief?
Yeah, well, we talk about private investments. There are some individual activities that accountants and obviously accountants supplying a virtual CFO service could come into contact with. But the main ones are around the Section 708, which I just mentioned, and that enables a company to raise up to $2 million in a 12-month period from no more than 20 investors. Early stage innovation company was a great initiative, but I'm afraid not enough people know about it. And the people are accountants that I'm referring to, and we need to also examine crowdsourced funding equity raising, which was the stablemate of early stage innovation, and it created a new process for capital raising purposes.
Okay, so they're the things that we're going to cover off. Let's just quickly go through these one at a time and just outline the benefits and the issues raised in the course. So, firstly, what are some of the common challenges businesses face when applying for government grants, and how does this course address it?
The common problems are that the government really is not interested in supporting a business unless the business has already done something. They will not make funding available upfront for research and development or creating new business activities unless the business person has shown the initiative to get started first. It's different when there's been a disaster. Governments will supply funding then and some grants to help people get re-established. But in the business sense, which is what we're generally looking at here, it requires the entrepreneur to have done some initial thinking. So that means they've got to sit down and put pen to paper and plan where they're headed, and not sit back and say, oh, well, the government will give me the money. The government won't give them the money. There's a lot of competition to get government grants, and they have to have thought through their business process. Now, the vast majority of people that I meet in this as a consultant need support from a third-party person like an accountant who has taken the time, though, to gain the knowledge of what the grants are about. You need to read grants. I had an inquiry last week about a mining grant in the Queensland government's got. Now, I hadn't personally had anything to do with that grant before, so I spent a couple of hours over the weekend reading about it to familiarise it myself so that I could give that prospect some advice.
Yes, okay. So hopefully during the course, we'll get a better understanding of some of those challenges and opportunities. Moving on, Peter, how important is understanding Section 708 of the Corporations Act for advisors, and what key insights does this course offer on this topic?
Well, 708, as I said before, was the start of this process whereby small companies could go to the market. We've got to remember the general law in Australia is that no one can go to the market to try to raise capital unless they've produced a document that's approved by the Australian Security Investments Commission. That's the opening position. And what 708 enabled was that a small company that wanted to raise capital could raise up to 2 million, as I said before, from 20 investors in 12 months. But there can be no advertising, there can be no marketing. And the offer has to be made to a group of people who have expressed an interest in this company's activities. It's not a wide promotion. You've got to be very careful if there's any mention in the media of what the company's doing. It can't be that we've got 100,000 shares for sale at $2 each. You cannot run that type of article under Section 708.
Okay, so we'll go through that in much more detail during the course. You've already mentioned early stage innovation and some of the challenges and opportunities present for advisors and investors. Can you give some more information on that topic?
Yes, early stage innovation company was put in place, and it was quite unique in Australia in that it offers an incentive and a carrot, if you like, to investors to invest in a company that qualifies. The government was seeking to find companies that were involved on new projects. So they were looking for young companies, not necessarily young executives, I might add, but young companies under 6 years of age and on a fairly small basis. Their expenditure had to be less than $1 million over a 12-month period. And their income had to be less than $200,000, not including any grant funds from the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant. So it's fairly narrow, and the companies then have to pass one of two tests. We have the gateway test, where there's a series of questions and they earn points for what they've already achieved. There's a strong emphasis in those questions on companies who have been undertaking research and development. But one of the traps is some people will tell you they've been undertaking research and development, but that was when they were a sole trader or in a partnership. That's not a company. And the government specified in the legislation that that expenditure has got to be conducted within the company structure. The point system also rewards a company that's already been accepted into the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant, which unfortunately, no longer exists, but it's been replaced by a new grant, which we now cover, the Industry Growth Program. If the company is very new, say they've previously undertaken all their activities in a partnership or as a sole trader, they may be able to qualify under the second test, which is called the Principles Test. The Principles Test has got 5 key questions that have to be answered. And I'm at great pain to tell people it's not a yes-no answer. It's meant to be a submission. I think it should be at least one A4 page, because similar questions are asked by Oz Industry in some of their government programs, and they're the other adjudicator on this grant. That's the Tax Office and Oz Industry. Oz Industry have got very highly qualified experts involved in a whole range of innovative activities. So they look at the responses to the 5 questions, and the company may be able to qualify there. But unfortunately, Dale, as you found last year, there's a lot of people in the accounting world don't seem to know much about early stage innovation company. You had an inquiry, which you referred that gentleman through to me. He claims he'd rang 16 accounting firms in 3 states and couldn't find anyone that knew about early stage innovation company, which quite surprises me, because this particular way of funding a company was made for SMEs. No one else will fit into that very restrictive process as to who's eligible for that status. So it's not a grant as such, it's a status that's awarded, because the investor gets a benefit. The investor gets 20% of their investment in the company as a tax offset off their tax bill. There are limits. And they also, if they hold the shares that they've been allocated in the company, don't have to pay any capital gains tax if they hold those shares for more than 12 months and less than 10 years. So it's quite an attractive way for young companies to be able to raise money.
Right, thanks, Peter. We'll talk much more about that during the course. Another topic in this course, crowdsourced funding, is becoming increasingly popular. Can you briefly discuss the roles and responsibilities of crowdsourced funding intermediaries highlighted in this course?
The government was probably about 6 years behind the other major Western world countries, including New Zealand, in the creation of crowdsourced funding equity raising. And it was finally gazetted in 2017. It wasn't that far back in the 1900s. But the regime in the UK and New Zealand in particular had created this concept of an intermediary. So the intermediaries in Australia are businesses with financial services licenses that applied. And I understand that the Australian Security Investment Commission awarded Guernseys for intermediaries to 16 organisations. Their role is to be the gatekeeper on behalf of the government. They have to satisfy themselves that the applicant company has met all of the requirements to be considered a crowdsourced funding equity company. So in short term, turnover has to be under $25 million worldwide. Value of assets has to be under $25 million. The company cannot be listed on a stock exchange anywhere in the world. And the money has to be put to investment purposes. It's just not to be raised to be lent to another company in the group, for argument's sake. The government wants this money out there earning, hopefully, profits so that the investors will receive a dividend reward. The intermediary is also a promoter of the company in the presentations that are being made to potential investors. Any investor has to make their contribution via the intermediaries platform, as it's called in the legislation. That's their website, and you place your investment with them. There is an investment warning, which is pretty harsh, but it's what the government demanded, and every investor has to acknowledge that they've received that warning, and that's why everything's got to go through the intermediaries website, because they then keep records that the investor was supplied with the information. A retail investor has a 7-day cooling off period for this type of investment, and the intermediary collects all the money, and as long as the company has achieved its targeted subscription level, they can have a minimum level and a maximum level. But as long as they've achieved the minimum level, the intermediary will then close the offer, and 7 days later, in case there's any last-minute withdrawals by retail investors, they pay that money across to the company, less their fee. Their fee is normally around 6% of the capital raised, but that is subject to negotiations with the company directors. I should have mentioned the intermediary is appointed by the company directors, so it's not that they have to accept a particular intermediary. They negotiate with the intermediary, and the intermediary will give them an overview of how they'll promote their company. When that money is handed over together with the list of the new shareholders, that's the end of the intermediary's appointment. They then submit a report back to ASIC, and that's it. If the company wanted to raise some more money later in the year, and as long as they don't exceed the maximum capital raising, which is $5 million in a 12-month period, they could have another attempt to raise money, and some companies have already done that, or they could potentially go through the process again the following year. The company can appoint the same intermediary or someone else, another intermediary, but you can only deal with the ASIC-appointed intermediaries. And that's how the process works. About $380 million has now been raised. There's been one company do a public offer to the stock to join the stock exchange that started off as a crowdsourced funding company. Unfortunately, there's been 2 companies get into financial difficulties, but we are dealing with the real investment world here, and those sort of issues will arise.
Thanks, Peter. Finally, venture capital, one of the main topics of this course, often involves rigorous due diligence. What are some of the critical aspects of the due diligence process that the course emphasises?
Venture capital investors are people more from the big end of town, if I can use that sort of phraseology. They're used to being executives in major corporations, or they have been fund managers raising capital for larger companies. Therefore, they expect the company to measure up to the standards that they are used to, quite frankly. So they expect the company to have a leadership team that's capable. They expect the company to have a vision that's then documented into a workable business plan, budgets and cash flow forecasts. but they're really looking for a group of people with a vision and an enthusiasm to deliver on that vision. They're very conscious of obtaining a return on investment. They're also very conscious of the company setting exit strategies. They want to know when the company expects that there might be an opportunity for an exit to occur. Now, that could be that the company is getting itself ready to be ultimately acquired by another organization, or that the founders of the company are going to have generated enough money themselves to be able to make an offer to buy out some of these venture capital investors. So venture capitalists are not interested in the main in making an investment and then letting it sit there for 20 years. They want to see that their money is being used to generate wealth within the business, and that the executives are working towards achieving an exit.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Finally, what advice would you give to accountants and business advisors looking to expand their expertise in equity financing through this course?
Those of you who are in the capital cities, please go along to a business angel meeting. In every capital city in Australia and some of the regional areas, there is a business angels group. And within ESS BIZTOOLS, I'm going to publish a list of those organisations. These are just groups of people who come together who are interested in investing. They tend to be people who have been successful running smaller businesses. They might be retired executives, or they could still be working. And many of them bring real life skills and are quite happy to still be involved. Whereas with venture capitalists, they're a bit more remote. The others can get in and assist. So it's gaining an understanding of what they're looking for. What the accounting firm then needs to do is to develop the skills in-house to be able to sit down with entrepreneurs and with their leadership team, not as a humble accountant, but as a chief financial officer, bearing, so that you can work through with the leadership team on the development and documentation of their strategies. Now, some of those companies will already have those documents prepared, but in my experience, most haven't. They need guidance, but it's very important that the documents have been created, are owned by the leadership team, that they're not seen to be yours as the accountant that's come in and prepared this. I find that's one of the big problems, because the presentations that are going to be made at various investment forums to try to raise capital, or indeed the presentations that have to be made to government departments for the grant funds that I've referred to, that has to be made by the CEO or one of the other members of the leadership team, not the accountant. You might sit in the background. So it's important that you appreciate what's involved in a business plan, predictive accounting reports, that's budgets, cash flows, projected balance sheets, the vision, that you've talked to the leadership team about their rhythm of meetings, because investors are very interested in how is this business run? What happens every day, week, month? Is there a cycle? What's the process? Is there a board of directors? Who's on the board of directors? It shouldn't just be the entrepreneur and his wife and brother-in-law, unless they all bring great business skills. But they should be trying to get some other people involved that have got the business knowledge.
Great. Thanks very much, Peter, for this introduction to the course. Further information can be found on the course within the course brochure, which is available through the CPD for Accountants website. If you do have any other questions about the course, please contact us, and we're very happy to talk through the details and the opportunities. Thanks again, Peter.
Thanks, Dale, and we look forward to making these presentations.